When I first started at the Rockets, the referendum had just passed to build what is now Toyota Center. So the Rockets were actually a tenant in what was Compact Center, which is where, was the summit, which is where the championships were earned, both championships for the Rockets. But it was a small, it was a small organization. Ticketing was really run as almost like a box office functionality. It didn't really have the infrastructure that it has today. And there weren't very many hospitality spaces and premium spaces back then in the way that buildings were built. So we didn't have a suite department. Our partnership team was relatively limited in the areas that we can control. And so when I joined in 2001 as an account executive, the team was also growing to build Toyota Center, to set up arena operations, to build out true sales infrastructures and all of this, everything that has to go alongside that. So it's pretty different than it was then. But at the same time, my first year, we went through a 15 game losing streak. We drafted Yao Ming the next year. So it was like, this kind of turning point in a rebuild. And that's a bit where we are right now as well. So I feel like it all comes full circle at some point. If you stick around long enough.
Speaking of ticketing, tell me more about that. I'm intrigued, very literally, from a business perspective. I know that you've been known for being innovative and progressive with digital practices and, innovative ticket pricing and other tactics. Do you mind taking us through the evolution of ticketing and in particular, where you think it goes from here?
Yeah, I mean, my background here was, we talked a little bit about when Toyota Center was opening. So when we opened Toyota Center in 2003, we had made the decision prior to that to go with a white label ticketing company to open the building, which was unheard of at the time. I think we were probably the first team to move away from the big players in the space. And like I mentioned before, we are a relatively lean staff. So it was all hands on deck to make that work. So I learned the technology of ticketing very early in my career. So sometimes, they say it's better to be lucky than good. I kind of lucked into a few, right? It's like I lucked into a few opportunities that enabled me to learn things in a different way than I would have had I been in a different situation. So we opened Toyota Center with this new ticketing system. I think everybody knows the background. 5, 6 years later, Flash Seats in Cleveland had come into play, and then they purchased the company, and then it became Veritix, and then now it is Access Ticketing. But all of our crew here really learned kind of back end technology of how ticketing works, and so when digital ticketing came into play, we understood kind of the evolution and the barcode and the original version of what will eventually become an NFT, like understanding that path of travel, how that works for the consumer from the front, from the moment that they decide to purchase the ticket to the end user of the game, and being able to follow all of those transactions in a seamless way was something that we were able to take advantage of really early on. So it gave us access to data points, whether that's pricing or consumer knowledge or any of that information at just a much higher and more in-depth level than what was available anywhere else, because of how quickly we adopted digital ticketing. And that allowed us to learn about pricing trends and all of these things that led to what is the ticketing world today.